Hey, everyone, we're live now to Russ, who has something to say.
So it turns out that the WWE finally had one of their wrestlers test positive for COVID-19. Now, before that, back in April, they had an on-air talent test positive, and I figured it out pretty quickly because you saw that this person wasn't on shows. Now, after that happened, the WWE made a statement saying they're taking all precautions. They're locking things down. They kept using the word locking things down and everything else. And then a Yahoo article came out yesterday, and as it turns out, they haven't done any testing of their athletes. They're letting them come and go, and they don't do any testing. So now they're closing down for a little while because this person was last there on June 9th, this wrestler who tested positive, and now you don't know. Now you have to do contact tracing.
No testing at all.
No COVID-19 testing. That's what they reported.
Not like they don't have any kind of body contact or anything. You know?
It's serious. This is not like this is what the sport thrives on, physical contact.
Yeah, how ridiculous.
So it's basically police your own is what they're saying. Police yourself.
I'm curious as to how much paperwork the wrestlers had to sign off on just to
probably a lot.
That's a really good point.
WWE liable.
That's a really good point.
This is the cautionary tale for all the leagues right now.
That's the key with Major League Baseball, right? They want their players to sign off a waiver, in essence. Absolving them of any blame if something happens. But there, at least they'll be testing.
And if I had any investment in the WWE at this point, I would probably have. If I'm a sponsor, I'd pull. I would pull right now and hold McMahon to the fire over this.
Yeah.
This is on him.
Oh, you got it.
The other thing is they had people in the audience, and they were told, the people on the side, they have like this glassed-in area, and then they let people come in. Some come in to sort of give them that reaction that they've been missing, and they told them not to wear masks.
Before we start the show, I have to congratulate.
Hold on, Mike. Hold on.
Okay.
I want to get reaction from that. When you have a company that is inviting in the public and saying, don't wear masks,
right?
That is a problem.
But we have our presidents doing the same freaking thing. I don't want to.
I know.
Political, but it's the same. It's the same. I don't know.
No, they moved the rally outdoors, and they're giving away masks.
All right. Well, that's a change, Mike. I mean, that's a change, and thankfully, that's happening. And I will appreciate anyone who makes a change is always a good thing. All right.
But I mean,
the mentality of this is out there because what has happened is the mask has become like a masculine symbol. For whatever reason, like there's an idea like, okay,
emasculating symbols, which are looking for their act.
Right. It's a better way of putting it.
Like Aubrey Huff saying,
Huff, right?
If idiots like Aubrey Huff,
yeah.
If we got people listening to the show and you're like, oh, I don't really care. Right?
Yeah.
He's a moron.
Well, if you look at, I don't know if you guys read the Wall Street Journal article yesterday, but there was a whole article in terms of how they're getting a better understanding as to how the virus is spread. Right, so they had the article about the singers, how about 85% of the singing from a choir caught it because of their proximity and the spit and everything else. Well, your thing, Russ, in terms of A, people who hadn't been tested who are wrestling, B, physical contact and probably their saliva and everything else that is coming off of them in sweat, and B, C, then you have people in an area that's probably relatively close to the stage not wearing a mask at all. I would say that's the petri dish for people potentially getting infected.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's just I just people just have to. I mean, I know it's hard. I know it's incredibly hard, and it's incredibly hard to at this point.
No, but some of this could have been foreseen. I mean, come on.
Yeah. No,
don't ask audience members to come in without masks. Tell them you can't come in unless you have a mask. That is ridiculous. Like I keep getting every day. I get opposition on my Facebook page. And people are like, well, what am I supposed to do? Never live? And I'm like, no, go out in public and wear a mask.
Constitutional.
It's not that hard.
How is that even constitutional?
Well, so the mask issue clearly is obviously depending on your proximity to the individual from a social distancing. If you're going to a WWE event, you are certainly going to be well within the 6 feet radius that they've talked about.
No, but they're in a plexiglass box.
Huh?
They're in a plexiglass box, these fans. You don't understand.
Right. I'm saying is proximity-wise, you're You're right.
I know, so
probably
they think they're safe. That's the reason they asked them not to wear masks, is because they figured, well, we built this plexiglass, they're safe. They don't realize how this works.
They should just put the boards up for an NHL game and keep them away from the wrestlers.
No, but that's essentially what they've done.
Right.
And it's not
pretty much what they did.
But that's presuming everybody who's coming to the event or also have not been infected, and therefore you're around people you have no idea as to whether or not they have or have not been tested, and have come back as negative in terms of their testing.
The last thing I want to say about it is, like, there was a study just done. Even if you are asymptomatic, you may have lung damage. And for a lot of these people that say, well, you know, like, because when people go out and they're getting it and they're saying, well, we got over it, it's okay. It might not be okay for you. You might want to get a CT scan because it might have affected your lungs for the rest of your life.
Right.
That's all. That's it. That's
no,
all.
I mean, yesterday, my daughter, who's having she's got tested yesterday. You know, she's been quarantined in a section of our house, you know, for now 7 days. Yeah. I mean, when she leaves the room, she's got a mask on and everything like that. We're all sanitizing. We have an alarm that goes off every 25 minutes, I think it is, or something like that. That we all sanitize our hands. It's just like, you know, and yet, you know, people are being told that they should go and attend an event. And it doesn't even matter if you're talking about them getting it from the people. You know, they're not in a box away from every other person in there. You know, if there's plexiglass shielding them from the performers or whatever you want to call them, that's one thing. But there's more people with them than there are performers. I just don't understand it. The performers are actually probably the safest people on there because they're being shielded from the whatever thousands of people.
The other problem too, Eck, is there was a April 22nd article where basically an employee said they're not taking safety measures here, and WWE quickly acted back and said these accusations aren't true. They know they can go to human resources, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, and we've seen, if you watch some other shows, a lot of corporations are saying they're taking measures, but they never say what they're actually doing when they're taking measures. Yeah. And we assume that people are getting tested, and they're not. That's why when these leagues and the NHL, when they say they're testing players, and now we know because we've had players come back, that's how you know they're actually testing. A lot of times this is lip service.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's start the show.
All right, here we go. Ready? Here we go. What's the date today? It's 17th. Here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Wednesday, the 17th of June. Okay. 2020.
I'm Michael Agello, and I'd like to congratulate all NHL fans for voting for Chance the mascot over Gritty. Eat it, Gritty.
There's a new champ in town.
I'm Anthony Vigioni, and I, at this point, don't really have much of a rebuttal for this anymore. I'm tired of this.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology. I even promised my next year's vote to Finn because I met Finn in person out of costume.
Oh, get the nepotism. You know, seriously.
I did.
Yep. Anybody who pays attention to you even a little bit, get your vote.
And that's Jan. Jan will be Jan will bring it a time later to determine. There's Jan right there.
Say, I'm Jan Levine.
I'm Jan Levine. Want to pull the marionette string also for me, Mike? I can move my arms and my legs a little bit if you want.
The truth of Hockey Buzz comes out. And I'm Eklund, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in the comings, goings in the hockey world. We're going to talk about a lot of different things today. A lot of little things are happening, a lot of different things. But one of the things I really want to talk about, because we've been promising it forever, is the Ottawa Senators. And I think we should start there. But
we can finish with it because with the continuing news about the Sabres, I think we have to leave.
We'll start with the Sabres news, but we're definitely going to stop at 12:30 and go to the Ottawa Senators.
Okay, deal. All right, this is
not a mic with the news.
It came out after the Buzzcast yesterday, after we had Joe Yerdon on, the extent of the just slashing and burning of the Sabres organization. Not only Jason Botterill was fired and his assistants Steve Greeley and Randy Sexton. The entire coaching staff of the Rochester Americans, including Chris Taylor, who was well thought of and had the Amerks rather successful the last couple of years.
He had a good record.
Good record. The entire or one half at least of the scouting staff, and a lot of the player development staff, guys like Mike. I didn't even know Mike Komisarek was part of the Sabres organization, but he was let go. So this was a wholesale.
Was the other?
I'm sorry.
Chris Barch was the other.
Yeah.
The other development.
And Ryan Jankowski, who was their director of amateur scouting. So completely across the board. And they waited, and this is the thing I thought was despicable. They waited until after they had the media availability with the Buffalo media, Terry and Kim Pagula, Kevin Adams, and Ralph Kruger. They waited to announce all this 2 to 3 hours after they held the conference call, because I'm sure these questions would have come up in the press conference at that point. Why are you making a large swath through the organization? They referenced in the conference call doing things more efficiently. Well, honestly, I have a feeling that the fact that they don't have to pay anybody probably for 3 or 4 months until October, closer to the draft, that is one of the things that's efficient. It's their bottom line is
it's very goal, as I said yesterday, and I mentioned this on Twitter, very Golisano-esque. Very Golisano-esque. This idea of smaller staff and efficiency just sounds just like the old video. To me, it rings in my ear of the old video scouting idea. Under Golisano. It's just, I feel terrible. Again, there's part of me that says, okay, amateur scouting wise, maybe the Sabres have not been fantastic. And again, at the end of the day, the ownership, the new management, do they have, are they, can they completely clear house as they did? It's within their rights. It's their organization. That being said, the way it was handled was pretty rough to watch.
Here's what I'll bring up about corporate efficiency, because I've had to deal with that too in a previous life. Corporate efficiency doesn't mean fewer employees, and all they did was eliminate critical voices and other opinions. That's all they did. They just wanted a company full of like opinions. Now they have it.
It was a perk.
Yeah. And now it's either going to work or it's going to fail miserably. But this isn't like what the normal NHL model is. And I'm really surprised Gary Bettman, and he may have said something, hasn't said something to him like, I don't recommend this, because he's probably said that to Josh Harris once or twice too, I'm sure, in private. It's one of those things where you do have people in certain jobs for reasons. Now, if you want to save money, saving money is one thing. But again, if you want to get rid of everybody who's involved with the draft because you say you have everything, that's nice to have the work. But again, when you're at the draft table and those guys aren't there to back up their work, it doesn't mean the same thing. And especially now, if they either rip up what they're doing and go start anew, then you are completely changing and you don't have enough time. I know everybody says, well, they got months, they could figure out the draft. It's really not enough time, I'm telling you.
Yeah, because you're already on a certain path at this point.
So I guess the key question is and you guys have brought up, what is the actual rationale for the decision, right? If you're talking quote unquote corporate efficiency, as somebody who's been through it several times, you just said, Russ, just because you're cutting bodies and layers doesn't mean you're becoming more efficient. You may actually become further inefficient, especially the bottom line impact is clearly wins and losses, right? That's part one of the equation. B, if the viewpoint is you want yes men, well, then you're not getting the cross opinion that you need in order to make the right selections. Conversely, the argument may be, well, we haven't made the right ones to date. Maybe we're trying a different model and getting it to work. Right. And the third thing is, if it's just finances, then honestly, this is the fun thing we've talked about. And I know, Russ, you don't love baseball, but Mike and I have talked about also with all the retraction of the minor leagues, you're not making things cheaper, honestly. You're not saving an inordinate amount of money. And the optics on what you're doing reflects so poorly on your organization that there's a downstream impact that doesn't always get factored in. And to me, that's kind of the key. Like, how are you going to be perceived and viewed in the future? And how does that impact your business model moving forward? And right now, Mike can attest, Sabres are probably a laughingstock right now, which is clearly not the direction you want to go in.
No, and in the end, I think you cost yourself money, because when you have a developmental staff.
Right back, guys. I got it.
Okay. When you have a developmental staff and you develop young players, those players are cheaper than guys you have to go out and sign in free agency. So I think in the end, if you don't develop your own players, you're not as efficient. But a little bit of an insight here, from Elliot Friedman, what he said yesterday on an impromptu 31 Thoughts podcast. He had been hearing that with the Sabres, that there was a complete collapse in communication between Botterill and the Pegulas after when apparently some sort of internal review had been done, and when they had their post season meetings. And like I said yesterday, we knew that Botterill's job was on the line next year. And in terms of budget, in terms of other aspects of the organization, the Pegulas wanted to cut things back, and Botterill wanted more control to be able to do things to preserve his job. And the viewpoint of the Pegulas apparently was that they feel burned by some of the outside opinions that they got from other NHL organizations about people that they brought in. So they wanted the comfort zone of bringing somebody that they have nurtured for a decade, meaning Kevyn Adams. And we know what we're going to get out of him. We know him. We trust him. He's going to be our guy, not some guy we listened to other people and brought in. And now until we know that guy is in the organization, he's got control. Now we don't know exactly what we had until it was too late. So okay. It's definitely a trust factor. And Kevyn Adams said this today, Russ, and get this on the radio here. He was asked about Chris Taylor and the staff in Rochester, and he said that the priority for the AHL team for the Amerks will be, quote, player development. And that is essentially in the past that has been code for not spending money. And that's what
but there's two things with that. I do agree they have to work on player development. I've been beating that drum for months. But when you're cutting out layers of people, you are hurting your player development. So then it just becomes a buzzword. The other thing with this is I don't care so much that they made the selection of Kevyn Adams. What I care about is that they didn't interview anybody else. They just decided he's the guy instead of, there's one thing about interviewing that people forget, and companies do this all the time. They ask you, how would you do the job? And you can learn things from that. And they didn't care to even try and get that information, and that's bad.
Public with that. It basically, by saying what they said, Russ, is they don't trust anybody outside the organization.
Which is bad.
But that's where they're at mindset.
I know.
They were almost proud to say, we didn't search outside of the organization. This is our guy. We want control because everything else that has happened in the past is the fault of people that we brought in. And I've never seen a more closed-minded mindset when it comes to an organization. You need people from outside.
They were set on what they wanted right from jump the minute that they fired Botterill. Now, one thing I wanted to piggyback off of what Russ stated was about AHL is that you also are bringing young players in with an organizational mindset. You want to create an environment that helps them to grow. Winning does that. Now, I know they have a lot. They had a fair amount of veterans on the Amerks roster. That is true. But that being said, when you're bringing in young players to develop and you're not rushing them and you're developing them properly, that's where Russ gets into where we talk about the layers at the AHL level of bringing the players along. So by the time they come to your organization, they are ready to be major contributing members because they've been in a successful professional environment. So how exactly Kevyn Adams is going to go about doing that is going to be a big question, considering the fact that Taylor seemed to do a pretty darn good job along with that coaching staff for the Amerks to be successul.
Now, maybe
that at the NHL level that the team has been scuffling.
And Jan, maybe they wanted a coach in the AHL that is more along the lines of the philosophy of Ralph Kruger, and maybe there was some butting of heads there. But in the end, and it's tough to ignore. You have an organization that in the last 2 or 3 months has completely gutted their scouting, their management, their minor league coaching, their PR department. The head of ticketing. I mean, what hasn't been ripped to shreds in this organization?
Very little. I mean, me and Anthony talked about it, right? So you want to set up a model for play in your organization that's followed throughout the organization that goes from bottom to top and top to bottom. With so many changes that are done, to kind of set out that mandate in terms of what's going to be followed is almost impossible because now you're almost starting all the way from scratch, which means that what you want to have as your baseline within your organization is now constantly changing and churning, which reflects badly, first of all, in your minor league program, but also as it bubbles up to what the on ice product is in the NHL level. And there was progress being made, not significant or quick enough progress, but at the NHL level, it sure looked like there was some progress being made. And now you wonder how far back the group will take before they even progress forward. And will those individuals setting up the new model, are they going to be here when you're maybe ready for success?
And Russ, it was funny because a couple people, one person via Twitter, and then later on Friedman on the podcast suggested the same name in terms of bringing in a veteran guy, a former GM, to help with the scouting, to provide some structure. And that name is somebody we both know, Rick Dudley, who is based in Western New York, who travels up to Toronto a lot to scout games. He's currently assistant GM with Carolina. That would be the perfect fit for an organization that doesn't have a lot of, right now, it doesn't have anybody of any experience to come in and be the sounding board. Another name was Scott Luce. I'm telling you right now, a Dudley or a Scott Luce or anybody worth their salt is not coming into Buffalo unless they have some control over hiring people and a philosophy. And if the Pagulas are insistent on stripping it down, going more to video scouting or whatever, they're not going to get a good goddamn in terms of anybody to come in and take over.
Right. So let's say Dudley and Luce, who both of them I know have had them on shows many times. If they come in, they are going to want to run the draft. And the Pagulas aren't going to let them. So that's probably a non-starter. And they're going to want to hire at least a person or two to help them get ready for the draft, to get their idea of what is our plan for the draft. And Kevin Adams is going to have to do that with somebody. If you are going to have it be all video, it's going to be a problem. It really is. I mean,
I think for this year's draft, at this point now, you do have a lot of your content already pretty much set.
If they believe in it.
If they believe that, that's the question. But again, that's the data that they have available.
Right.
Here's some things I got some.
You're going to have to use that content.
I don't know. The Leafs didn't.
Then that's going to be
the Leafs ripped up their scouting reports, right, Mike? They didn't go with it.
They fired 75% of their scouts that were hired by Dave Nonis, and then they brought in everybody under Dubas and under Mark Hunter, and then later Lou Lamoriello. So that was when they were comparing the last time there was a purge of that sort. They did say the Leafs 6 years ago. So yeah, you said breaking news.
All right, yeah, a couple things. First of all, I got to teach my sources that the podcast is at 12 now, not 1.
Can you remind me, please, because I can never keep track of when it is. So
I messaged you. How about looking at your messages?
I did look at my messages. Every day it seems to change. It's like the bouncing ball over here.
I get these. So I've got the second day in a row. I've gotten calls in the middle of this. Sorry. So here's the thing. Two things. One about the quarantine situation in general, and one about the Buffalo situation. So there's an issue going on among the teams now. One of the things they're discussing, and I don't think this has been reported anywhere. I probably should write about it before I say it here, so don't everybody else write about it anyway. But anyways, here's the thing. Doctors. All right. So if you're a team, every team has a doctor, right? They have team doctors for various things. Getting a doctor to quarantine for 3 months, not an easy thing to do. Okay, like these team doctors are not just like responsible for the teams; they also have practices. They have pull out things, and the issue comes up like if someone gets hurt, in which they will. Someone takes a shot off the ankle, has to get an X-ray. Where do they go for that X-ray? All right, so get that X-ray.
We did bring that up the other day. That's why MLS and the NBA chose Disney, because there's a hospital right there, and they're going to go right to that hospital.
Right.
As an example,
the NHL doesn't have that right now, and the concept of when you leave the bubble, where you get a tooth knocked out, even you can still play, but you lost a tooth, you got to see a dentist.
Right.
Because for whatever reason, when you leave that bubble, how quickly can you get back in? And doesn't that defeat the whole purpose of the bubble in the first place if you leave that bubble? So if you get out of there, so the teams are a little bit worried about that right now, because they're talking to their doctors about who we're going to have to bring with us to quarantine.
Wouldn't you think that the NHL, if they're going to have hub cities, would provide the doctors? I think that would be part of it. You have 12 doctors for 12 teams.
No, it's not. You can't get 12 doctors. I mean, they don't need 12 doctors.
Right. They don't need 12 to.
And you're also
really-
putting
what
you have
they
a doctor
really
that
need
could
is
life on
organized-
hold for 3 months potentially, which is the thing that X talking about, right? No, those doctors have other responsibilities, not just spending time with the team.
Right, not just being quarantined. So they might be able to get one doctor to work for the entire thing with everybody and be that. But teams like their own doctors. This is like a big thing with players and teams. They're very specific, and they have doctors who know the players. And like there's guys with knee injuries, and they go see the guy, and he's like, yeah, I tweaked that knee thing a little bit again, and There's all these little things that go on that we don't even think about, with
Right.
with doctors and teams. And this is a way bigger issue than is being led on from what I'm being told. Like that their teams are talking a lot about this as to how this is going to get handled and what happens if you have to leave. And if a player has to go see the team doctor, can he come back into the bubble or can he leave the bubble? So
Well, they did do it in soccer. Remember, the coach went out. He went out for I don't know, toothpaste, and then he got quarantined and put back in. I think what we are seeing though, Ek, and this is a fair point, is as we get down to the nitty gritty. Now we're getting down to the nitty gritty of all these things, and it's a lot more complicated than we all give it credit for.
Way more complicated. Way more complicated. I mean, it's not just a matter of like putting them in. There are so many things. These teams have full-fledged machines that work with them. Like they have these machines are part of their everyday. I mean, it's more. We often talk about how hockey teams and players are like creatures of habit. These machines are part of their habit, like these certain players, these certain people that deal with them, there's certain people that help them, this trainer, that trainer. I mean, you don't know what you're going to be able to get in here to this quarantine. You don't know how many people you're going to be able to bring with you. With less people, obviously, they're saying the least amount of people possible, right? Which is a good thing.
All right. So wouldn't the thought be for Vegas, you use the Vegas team doctor, and for the Toronto, you use the Leafs team doctor? Wouldn't that make sense?
Yeah, but what are you going to have? You're not going to be able to quarantine that doctor.
So maybe you go with almost like a rotating basis, right? You have X numbers of doctors for 1 month. Then you have another one if they've been symptom-free, right? So that the doctors aren't necessarily putting their lives on hold
in
for the entire period of time.
In terms of concerns, I think this is probably like in the middle and not like a blazing concern that's going to be.
Is apparently a big one. That's why I bring it up, Mike. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. Like, there's a lot of other things here, but to the players, this is a major concern because they want to know how it's going to. And I think the big thing is, it's like, okay, we could all fly somebody back to see the team doctor on the team jet or whatever. You can fly him back and forth, whatever. You can do that. But the idea of that is, has that person, say we're in Canada, say Canada makes specific rules about quarantining, but these guys, they cannot leave. Like this is another thing about, Toronto, for example, like they say, okay, you're allowed to come in. We're going to let these guys come in without the 14-day quarantine, but they're not going to let them fly back to the U.S., get seen by a doctor and fly back.
Right, but they would be under the same circumstances if they were at their own home.
Yeah.
There is no perfect way to go see a doctor, but when you go see a doctor, you have to wait in the parking lot. They walk you in, you're the only one in there, and they get you in a place, then they do that for the next person. Like there is no other way. And when you go into a hospital, they're COVID testing you before you get an operation. That they do that beforehand. So there is no other way.
So there is no other way, but a lot of people have seen doctors during this period of time. Maybe like I had a doctor come during this period of time that was virtual, where you get on the you get with somebody and you virtually talk to them. That can be done in a lot of situations, but we're talking about injuries to players, like specific kind of things like that, more or less, which have to be X-rayed and MRI'd and things and that kind of stuff. Some buildings have like an X-ray or an MRI in there. Not an MRI usually, but usually an X-ray. There's usually always an X-ray machine in the arenas. But who's going to look at that X-ray and who's going to? There's so. And you're right, Mike. You're right, Russ. That it is the same thing as normal. He goes to the doctor. The question is not about that. The question is breaking the bubble of the quarantine by doing
right.
That.
But if you're all right, so as an example, if T-Mobile has some of that medical equipment in there, which they might, you're only emailing to a radiologist to read whatever. It's not like you have to bring X-rays somewhere and hold them. All this gets done electronically to figure out what the problem is.
Unless somebody gets hurt, and we've seen this before. Somebody gets hurt, they have an X-ray at the arena. The X-ray is inconclusive. Then they have to go to a hospital, and then they have an MRI, and then they find out he's got a broken leg. You know what I'm saying? It's always that second or third review of the situation. But in that situation, it's like, okay, the person's outside outside of the bubble, I would assume, again, if you're in a hub city like Vegas or Toronto or wherever, they're going to have a hospital assigned. They're going to have a location assigned where these players are able to go and be distant from the public to be able to get examined. Set up beforehand. If they do that, then this is not an issue. If they have to go all the way back to New York or Philadelphia to have their medical situation reviewed, then if they're outside of the bubble, then maybe they can't come back in.
Yeah,
if you get a tooth knocked out, Eck, you just spit out the tooth and you move on. I
agree. No, but I'm just saying that this is something that does happen with players. The other thing is this, okay? Before we get into the Ottawa Senators, because I promised we would at 12:30 and 12:32. All right, here we go. The other thing is with the Sabres. All right, with the Sabres.
Senators.
With the Sabres, a couple people I've talked to today have shared the same sentiment, and this might sound weird, but they weren't too thrilled with the way Kevin Adams said something during the press conference. And the thing he said during the press conference they didn't like was that this is my dream job. Okay, now that is something we hear people say quite often and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But among the hockey world, it's generally not said after someone you're working with has been fired.
You know what? I have to agree with that. I've never heard it said.
Right. It's not something you would in this. The normal thing to say in this, Russ, is this is a tough situation. Always tough to take over in a situation like this.
Right.
Bottle did a great job.
Yeah.
But here's
he didn't. There was no love lost type feelings there.
Yeah, and I'll give you the reason why, Ak, because he was not hired by Jason Botterill. He is a Pagula Entertainment Corporation employee. He was hired. He was hired 11 years ago as a player development guy, then was part of Lindy Ruff's coaching staff and was fired and brought back by the Pagulas in 2013 to run the Harbor Center. He's an employee of there's a level of trust.
He's also a player development. He also has been player development, right? And he was working with Botterill. He's a coworker of this guy.
He was the VP of Business Administration, and I don't think that has many intermixings with Botterill. And I'll tell you what.
Right, I think that's the misnomer.
You walked right into the next question that was next point that was brought up.
Because that's the misnomer that he was on, working with the hockey part, and he really was working on the business.
And let me just say this, and then you say what you're going to say. On the 31 Thoughts podcast, Jeff Merrick had been told by a source that Kevin Adams traveled with the team near the end of the year or before the pause, which was completely unusual because he was not part of hockey operations whatsoever. Right. So that was sending a signal that, okay, I'm overseeing what's going on because I'm preparing to take over at some point. And the some point was yesterday.
Right. So saying, this is your dream job, rub people the wrong way. Instead of saying, it's a tough spot to be in, Jason was a good guy. The other thing that was said during the press conference, which is kind of miffing some people in hockey, is when they said that Adams and Kruger have an already great relationship. Okay, so and at first indication, you're like, that's something that's normally said. They already get along really well. But the question is why? How would they have a great relationship? What? Based on what you said, Mike, just a second ago, we're saying that he's a business guy.
Right, because behind the scenes, they've been planning for this for a while. That's what I think.
It was an in-house coup with the coach being involved after being hired by Jason Botterill.
Yeah, and Kruger
came from the coach himself. And there's some people that think, and here's the question, that this is a Kruger call in a way, and then there's some I respect Kruger a lot, and I've said great things about him all the time. I think he's a great coach, but there are some things. I talked to somebody who literally said this. Ready? They're gonna like this. Coaching is a BS job. He wants to be president.
Well, you have to do something that when your team is bad.
On a hockey team says this.
Kruger went to extreme lengths to say, I'm only going to be the coach, but everybody knows that right now with the power structure being a neophyte general manager that has no experience and Terry and Kim, Ralph Kruger's sway and his opinion is going to carry a lot of weight.
He's going to end up being in this circumstance. You could probably say they're not going to go outside the organization for the AGM. In many ways, he's going to be you may look at this as him being the unofficial AGM.
Right.
To help bring him.
And who was also the unofficial AGM of both teams? The team president. Honestly, let's face it. The team president, we've seen it in more than one case. We've seen more than one case. The team president is in Philadelphia with Holmgren, for example, he's not the GM anymore, but there's no question he's in on all those decisions. And his opinion is being bounced off. Hextall and Holmgren had a good relationship. They would talk about stuff all the freaking time. Before that, Peter Luco in Philadelphia knew what was going on and also had definite opinions. So you're looking at stuff that, so this is actually the feeling is that, Kruger, why did he leave? He left a big president job, right, of a major soccer team to become a head coach in the NHL. And there are some people who feel like that in and of itself is weird, and that they feel like that he probably doesn't want to be a head coach in the NHL. That it's too much work. That you're going to get fired. That it sucks. You're always on the cutting line. He came here inevitably to be the president, and this is part of that.
Yeah, I don't know about that, because I think he wanted to right the wrong that happened in Edmonton, because there were guys that developed under him, but he got marginalized as a coach, and I think he just wanted to avenge his coaching ability and basically say, I can coach again. Let me show you.
And the last thing about this before we start talking Ottawa, the one interesting thing was Friedman essentially said that Botterill was not on board with the 8-year extension on Skinner, was not on board for the 8-year extension on Eichel. He wanted shorter term, higher money contracts. That was his philosophy. They butted heads on that. And the thought would be that, now I wonder what the heck that's going to mean in terms of Reinhart, in terms of Ristolainen, in terms of Dahlin. I mean, that could have long-term effects, because honestly, the smart thing would be to sign Dahlin for 8 years. But is that the philosophy now? I mean, probably, because if they were the ones who backed it, then that's what's going to happen. They're going to sign
players like Dahlin, who are obviously high-level talent in this league, among the best of their position, generally want to see some stability before even signing an 8-year deal. They would like to see something, it's rare that you see the McDavids and what Eichel did. Honestly, what both of them did was sort of rare in a way, because those teams were sort of very much in flux. Safe to say the Sabres have never been more in flux than they are.
This is history repeating itself, though. We had Matt Barnaby on another podcast I do, Stick to Hockey, and Matt Barnaby basically said, I guess it was Lindy Ruff, whoever the coach was at the time, wasn't on board with the Christian Ehrhoff signing. But things get thrust upon coaches all the time, and it seems like the Sabres are good at it because they've done it multiple times, and everybody's talking about it now.
Terry, the last thing I'll say on this, we got to move on. The last thing I'll say on this is this: there's another rumor out there. I don't put much credence to it, but this guy repeated it today to me. So this is the fourth person who said it to me, and they all say the same thing. I don't know. This sounds weird, but it's out there. So that take that for what it's worth. Okay, that Botterill wanted to trade Eichel. That he had talked to people.
I doubt.
I know, and believe me, I'm sitting there and I'm going to say the same thing you're going to say. But I've also learned never to say never in this world. That there are things that that you have to realize. Maybe he saw all the problems with his team, and for some reason thought he could get out of them by trading Eichel.
Here's the other one. Here's the other rumor that's out there that's come up there regarding, now that Kruger has more sway, that the Sabres will make a big pitch for Taylor Hall. I don't think they can.
They can't.
They can't. It makes no sense unless they find somebody to take Skinner's.
Taylor Hall would go there though. I think
that's fair too.
Hall's dead set on where he wants to go, from everything I've been told.
Yes,
it's basically a John Tavares situation with the Calgary Flames, and the Calgary Flames. It's even. It's got to be way even money, if not better money, that he's going to end up in Calgary. That's what everyone seems to say, which is why Johnny Gaudreau has been talked about so much recently.
Now let me make this segue, because we're talking about a team in the Atlantic Division who I think is the poster child for dysfunction. If it wasn't for the Ottawa Senators, who might be the poster child for dysfunction.
Right.
Because, at least Yzerman in Detroit has a structure. That team is going to be bad for a couple of years, but at least it's organized. Everybody knows where they're going. So, Detroit is bad right now, but I think under Yzerman, they're going to get better. I don't know about Buffalo. I don't know about Montreal, because Montreal has a tough time getting players to come there. And Ottawa, Russ, we look at the talent that they're bringing in. We look that they're going to have 2 top 5 picks in this upcoming draft, but the ownership is so chaotic, and everything that has happened, anything involving Eugene Melnyk, is such a train wreck that I don't know whether the talent that Dorian brings in is going to mean anything, because everything else is so toxic.
One of our chat room guys put in this, which I think is the perfect transition.
Well, no, and that's true. There's different layers.
Thank you, Richard, for that, because I like that.
The only thing I could say is Pierre Dorian can only do his job.
Right.
He's clearly doing his job. He's setting the table. That's all he can do. He can't control the rest.
And he's done a pretty good job at that. I mean, let's give him some credit for that, because they're in a spot right now where they've got like a 40% chance, pretty much, of getting Lafreniere. You know, that they're depending on what math is today. You know, the odds are pretty good. I mean, picking up the San Jose pick was just, turned out to be enormous. Now that's a little bit.
I think combined it's 25% for the number one pick.
All right. But isn't it like 80% that are one of the top 2 picks or something like that?
Yes, right.
So and the second pick is, obviously a huge, great.
Either way, it's a great pick. No.
So he set up the Senators with getting one of those superstars, in a weird possibility, both of them. Now that doesn't say that he's going to get both of them at all, and that would be the craziest thing ever. But
he's put him in that position.
Now, some of that is luck. Did anyone think that the Sharks would be a lottery team? Did anyone think the Sharks would fall out? I did. I actually picked them not to make the playoffs.
I felt like that there was always a bubble with the Sharks.
Yeah.
There was, at some point, as you continue to add, with more and more veterans, and they've been, when you've been kicking the can as long as they've had. Now, again, they've had some good young players, and do have good young players in the organization. But there's always going to be that window of a year where things are not going to work out, and this turned out to be it for them. But there was always, I think, a chance with them that there was a chance of the bubble bursting on them.
Totally agree. Which is why when I looked at when I was looking at my predictions every year, you look at like the team that everyone thinks is going to make it that does, and the team that no one thinks is going to make it that does. The Sharks fit that mold for me. They this is the team that everyone thinks is going to make it that I think could fall apart. And they did, and they did very clearly fall apart.
I'm going to give you some insight into what I believe.
Part of that too, obviously.
Sorry, I'm going to give you some insight into what I believe is a drafting strategy by Pierre Dorian. He has drafted a lot of college kids, and I think he did that simply because there's a longer term on that. You don't have to sign a CHL. CHL player you got to sign after a couple of years, at least to the ELC. You don't have to with a college player. And not knowing what the finances are going to be, it's not a bad move, because some of those guys who are going to go 4 years, you can worry about it 5 years down the road. And they have
or they can jump into the league sooner with less, because the development's happening.
Either way.
Either way.
So I think that is a definite strategy, because they have, Bernard Docker and Tyconic are both at North Dakota, both really good defensemen. I think Docker's better, but they have a lot of college kids, and I think that's why they have a lot of college kids.
Yeah. The one thing I liked about them is that they were a very competitive team this year, and they were a lot more fun to watch than people.
Yeah.
They were not, they were not a team that you did in the past. You'd be like, oh, the Senators, that's not a game you're going to watch with center ice. And this year you were. Beyond the fact that Brady Tkachuk is just worth the price of it.
He's fun to watch.
They have a lot of young, hungry players fighting for jobs. So, and
Thomas Chabot is one of the best young defensemen in the world. He's a great defenseman. And honestly, the crazy thing about how he took over when Karlsson left, and they actually saw an uptick, in that position. Is nuts. Karlsson was a great guy who signed for millions and millions of dollars someplace else. But Thomas Chabot, he's a star. Tkachuk and
he is.
Chabot,
but we all knew he'd be a star. He had star potential.
Yeah, he had star potential. But when the defense was turned over to him being the top guy, he took that perfectly.
Yes,
he took that reign perfectly. They have 13 picks going into this draft. Okay, this is a serious. 9 of those are in the first 3 rounds. So they've got 9 picks in the first 3 rounds of the draft.
Either pick or to use his capital to make deals to make themselves a little better. If they
that's the point, because if you look at them right now, they have a dozen free agents, restricted or unrestricted. They have 35 to 40 million in cap space.
And here's the other thing about their picks that need to be known: that if the Islanders don't win the draft lottery and pick in the top 3, the Senators will have 3 first-round picks. They will get the Islanders' first-round pick.
Right.
They'll have 4 in the second round. That's 7 in the first 2 rounds. That's kind of unheard of. And
but the thing is that that's for 2 or 3 years down the road. I'm talking about the here and the now. And
but the more you get in the first round, the more it becomes like less than 2 or 3 years down the road. Especially if you get up in the top 5 picks or somewhere.
If they draft Byfield, he could play next year. Maybe,
right, Byfield,
Right, but
one of those guys is going to play next year for them, I would guess, right? I mean, we can guess that either Byfield or Lafreniere is going to be a Senator next year.
I mean, there's talk that Lafreniere may go to the Swiss League first and wait out the NHL.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's, that is a possibility. He may go the Matthews route. Byfield will probably play right away.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at the way they're structured right now, guys like Connor Brown, who I think led them in scoring last year, he's going to get a big payday because they have a ton of cap room and he deserves to get paid. Anthony Duclair, who had a good year last year, could get paid. And you have a guy like Tkachuk who's entering the final year of his ELC. This is the opportunity to get him locked up long term, and maybe he looks the organization in terms of the players on the ice and sees, okay, this is a group I want to commit to. But everything is directed towards ownership and the situation in Ottawa and the building and things like the embarrassment over the last week or so with the Senators Foundation separating themselves from the Senators. I mean, I still question whether this team is going to be in Ottawa in 2 years.
Well, we all do, but
obviously, and
Quebec
rumors are real, but they, that's the thing that obviously comes into play the most often. But I feel as if they're safe for.
They're safe for at least another year after this because nobody knows what's going to happen anyhow.
Right. Right now, no one's doing anything. No one's making any moves.
The other thing about this team that I think is underrated is, and Mike hit on it, so they got to Duclair. They recently got Vitaly Abramov in a trade, and I want to say he sort of got Gabaricked in Columbus, not by Torts, but just by the way Torts wants to play. He doesn't play that way, so he didn't do very well in the AHL with Cleveland. He goes over to Belleville, and he's got 41 points in 51 games and looks like the guy that I thought he'd be. That's another guy that they got who, again, is under ELC and everything else. These guys are coming cheap. They are getting talent. If they got a veteran goalie, they actually could do something in a year or two.
And I'll name five
really top goalie.
I'll name 5 or 6 players that are on ELCs. Yeah, I'll name 5 or 6 players that are on ELCs right now that could make the Senators and contribute next year. Josh Norris, Brandstrom, Logan Brown, Alex Formenton, Drake Batherson, Abramov. So you've got 6 guys. Maybe Schlapek. Seven, or Maxime Lajoie, 7, 8 guys who could make the team. And with all the free agents that they have, the only concern is with all those guys on ELCs, they have to get to the cap floor. So somewhere they have to spend money.
And this is the issue. And this is my fear with them, Mike. And I honestly feel as if this is where the Senators will be made or broken. They're in that spot now where the Oilers were, where the Sabres are. Which is that spot if you have a lot of young players, but you don't have the key veteran type guys that you need to make you a better than just like a young team trying to get by. Like these young teams, like we saw for years with the Oilers, they didn't go out and get anybody. And eventually they got good, but it took them way longer than it had to.
Right.
The same thing goes with Buffalo. Like Buffalo's kind of taking the opposite. They have actually gone out and gotten guys like Ryan O'Reilly are the right type of people to get. But you have to mix them because there are so many young players and so many young talented players, but you can't let them just play without any experienced guidance.
I mean, the one thing is that Ottawa doesn't have the star like Eichel, like McDavid to build around, but they might get that in this draft. But Russ, I think they're in a position where they're better off because they've got all those secondary, tertiary players like Formenton and Batherson who will be top 9 forwards in the NHL. I think it's less of a problem for them to get to the next step than teams like Buffalo and Edmonton because it's all on Eichel and McDavid. I don't think it's all on these guys. They just
I agree with that, but I still think Kachuk's an 80-point guy in the NHL, which is pretty close to star.
Yes.
The other thing is if they went out and just got a really good veteran defenseman and a really top-notch veteran goalie, I think they would surprise people how good they could get very quickly. But that's the whole thing. That's what they do need to spend a little. And if they spent it in those areas, they could really get some gains. Because, look, Craig Anderson's nice. He's not what he used to be either. So they need a level above that goalie, and they need a rock-solid defenseman to mix in with the guys they have. I mean, I do think they'd have something. It wouldn't be I don't think it's a playoff team next year, but it could be in 2-3 years.
I mean, right now they're goaltending for next year because I don't think Anderson will be back. I'd be surprised if he doesn't retire. Right now, their goaltending is Anders Nielsen and Marcus Högberg.
Yeah, it's horrible. They have to do something.
I'll give you a couple guys that I think would fit the bill of what I'm talking about, like what you're talking about, Russ, too. Like a couple guys that are out there that are possible. I'll start with Kyle Clifford. Like I think Kyle Clifford is a good fit for the Ottawa Senators. He comes in there. He's a guy he's a really good teacher. He's done well. He's been through the experience stuff. He's a very Brady Tkachuk type guy. You'd have a really nice mentor there in Kyle.
He's a heart and soul guy, and that's why Toronto acquired him. But everything that I've heard is he's going right back to LA. That LA traded him to get draft picks, and that they like him. They like him a lot. That he was part of that room. He was something.
And they're in a similar spot.
And they're in a similar spot.
Yeah. I mean, even though you would say, hey, he's part of the old guard.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need guys like that around to kind of show the younger players ropes, especially if they've been a part of a championship team.
But that type of guy, I agree. They need like if Ryan Callahan was healthy, then they acquired him in that deal with Tampa.
Yeah.
Then Ryan Callahan would be the type of guy that would be a third line guy and a leader that they could sort of build around. But he can't play anymore. So
another name along these lines, and I have definite opinions about this guy. I'm sure you guys do, but it's Patrick Maroon. Okay, so Patrick Maroon is another guy that I've heard connected with Ottawa.
I don't think he's a leader.
I think he's a leader.
No.
I wouldn't get him for that team.
Here's what I'll say about Maroon. Maroon could potentially might have an effect along the lines of because he's got a kind of a jovial personality.
Right.
Maroon. You could see maybe sort of a little bit of a Kevin Hayes-esque effect for a young team.
Right.
Maybe it's not an exact match there, but sometimes you kind of need someone to kind of act at that dynamic in the room, and if he could be productive within reason, productive numbers within reason.
But this is
see that maybe.
This is where all the draft picks that you were talking about would come into focus, because I don't think they're going to go out and sign a UFA to be that leader. They could trade a couple draft picks to get somebody whose contract is expiring, who's in his mid-20s, who is young enough to be part of the group when they're good in a couple years. They can trade a couple draft picks to get that type of guy.
And they do need that kind of player, but they also need the kind of player that you get when you don't have to give up anything for him, and he's going to help you through the short term, like to teach your young players. Like the other guy is Corey Perry. Now this is I know bizarre name maybe to many, but Corey Perry had a good year in Dallas. Like he actually had a strong year in Dallas. Could be a factor in the playoffs, and I think that Corey Perry, this is the kind of place I could see Perry thriving.
No way.
You don't think so? I do.
I would keep him away with every fiber of my being. I don't want. All he's going to do is teach Brady Tkachuk how to be a moron on the ice.
He was brought in as a secondary player in Dallas, and he can't even do that anymore.
He couldn't even stay on the ice. It's a bad idea.
No, I'll give you.
He was great at one time. Don't get me wrong.
No, not that I think he would re-sign there because he's only got 1 year left in his contract. But a type of player that you're talking about that is still effective is Kyle Palmieri. If they brought in a Kyle Palmieri as a guy to play in their top six,
he'd be great. But he's going to cost too much.
Right. And then that's the thing. If you trade a couple draft picks to get somebody who is retainable for 2 or 3, I mean, the Connor Brown deal, Connor Brown is a good player. I don't know if he's a leader, but he's sort of a heart and soul guy. And he has found himself in Ottawa where he was basically the fourth line jack of all trades with Babcock in Toronto, which I thought ill-suited him. Now he's going to have a second half of his career where he's going to be really good and make some money. And I'm happy for him.
Honestly, if I were Pierre Dorian, I would call up Kevin Adams and say, "Look, I'll give you like a second and a third for Will Borgen."
Oh,
you're not using them. You haven't utilized them.
I think they're going to use him this year, Russ, because they're going to. He's cheap.
I know, but I'm just saying, there's guys that they haven't utilized either. Right. That I think because there's so many picks in Ottawa's camp. You could call a team and definitely get somebody or a couple of players that teams are willing to part with for the picks, so they could tell their fan base, look, we have a lot of picks in this draft. This is really important. You could do that right now. This is the time to do that.
But more important than that sort of heart and soul guy, I think, is the goaltender. I mean, do you trade a first and a third round pick or something like that to Pittsburgh to get Tristan Jarry, or whoever they're going to keep, Matt Murray or Jarry? That might be the deal that you have to make.
An interesting name that came up with me, and I at first I shunned him, like, we wouldn't go there, and then I was told a little bit differently, was Braden Holtby, right? And Braden Holtby, who you think at first, okay, yeah, he's always been the, he's always been on a winner. He's a really highly competitive guy. He's also the kind of guy, though, who definitely wants to be the number one without any question marks, right? And that's a big deal for.
I wouldn't bring him in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's
too risky. He is really good, but the problem is Braden Holtby needs certain structure in front of him where he is not going to have that with this team right away.
I don't care if he gets overpaid by $2 million a year. Why is Braden Holtby at age 30 or 31 going to Detroit or Ottawa? It makes no sense. If he goes to Calgary, where I think he's from Alberta, if he goes there, it's a team that's ready to take that next step with guys like Matthew Tkachuk and Goudreau and Monahan and a pretty decent defense. There's some structure there. There's some possibility that they could make a run in the next year or two. A team like Detroit, a team like Ottawa, they're 2 or 3 years away from making the playoffs. So why do you throw away the rest of your prime for that? I think.
Well, the reason is this. I mean, we could all say the same. We could have all said the same thing when a certain guy named Marc-Andre Fleury went to Vegas. There's certain things that happen. There's a goalie mentality among certain kinds of goalies, and Fleury has it, and Holtby has it, that they are the difference maker. That they go in there, and it doesn't matter how good the team is. They have that cockiness and arrogance about them, and that's part of what makes them great players, right? They go in there, and that cockiness and arrogance also translates into a lot of confidence for a young team.
But Marc-Andre Fleury didn't have a choice.
I know he didn't have a choice.
And also, Fleury went to be the face of a franchise that was starting up, a whole different perspective than going to a Detroit or an Ottawa. I mean, a completely different mindset, how he was treated, how he's viewed, where he fits within the organization.
What I'm saying,
he's going to play in the future, all that's a component.
No, but what it can mean to a young team to get a goalie who's done things and has confidence is really, really cannot be underplayed. Like it can play through the entire. If you can pay him enough, and you say you're the starter for the next 3 years here, we got other guys coming in or whatever. But Ottawa does have some good young prospect goalies apparently.
Well. I don't think your philosophy is wrong. I just think in terms of they're not going to go out and sign a free agent like Holtby for $6 million, $7 million a year.
Not all the money in the world, Mike.
No, but
you got to get. We just said they have to get the cap floor. There's no better way to get the cap floor.
Right. I'm talking about the willingness of that goalie to go to Ottawa. It's better for the organization to trade for a younger goalie like a Jarry, who's 24 years old, who is retainable for 4 or 5 years, who has proved himself at the NHL level with a decent team, and build around that. At the same time, building with the players that you have. If you sign Holtby, by the time they're ready to contend for a playoff spot, he's 34 years old. He's probably done at that point.
That's okay because the reality is he gets you there faster because he gives the confidence to the team in front of him. The team grows. The team doesn't have to think about every little thing they're doing and worry about every mistake they're making. And eventually, in 3 or 4 years, you've got prospects that are coming, right? Like that.
Mike, the only caveat I'll give you is remember the Seattle expansion is coming. You have to can only protect certain goalies, right? So if you're going to sign somebody with the hope that Seattle might take him because you don't want to lose somebody else, or if something to set him up as being potentially the face of that franchise down the road, that may be something that a Detroit or Ottawa might do rather than losing other guys that are concerned about losing.
Yeah, I don't know Seattle's coming. They don't even have a name.
Well, we've come up with enough of them. So as far as we're aware of, there's going to be part of the NHL in about a year.
Tell me a little bit about
We
Marcus.
got one heck of an analytics department. We know that.
Tell me about Marcus Hogberg, Russ. I mean, Marcus Hogberg. What is this? Hogberg. What have I mean, these what I hear in the future.
Okay. I mean, I don't think he's the next coming. I think he could be possibly a backup. I don't think he's more than that.
How about
I know when they traded for Gustafsson, there was a chance, but I'm not sure he's even done anything. To me, this team needs a really solid veteran goalie. I don't think a young goalie is the way to go with this team because everything's young. You've got to have somebody who could play with things breaking down in front of them and still make big saves at big times.
Well, let me clarify. I'm not saying a 21-year-old goaltender. I'm saying somebody in his mid-20s who's established. I'm saying it doesn't make a lot of sense, and I doubt
you can't get that guy, Mike.
Well, maybe not. I mean, like I said, that's why I pointed at Pittsburgh, because you have one goalie who's in his mid-20s who they have to pay, and another goalie who's in his early 20s who they have to pay, and they can't pay both of them, so they're going to have to trade one of them.
Okay, but going with your Pittsburgh scenario that you always get stuck on, if they go with Jarry, it's not a guarantee Jarry looks the same with that defense over there. Pittsburgh defense is a lot better, and if they spend a lot of assets or a lot of money on them, it could be a complete failure.
It's definitely a roll of the dice, but that's what Dorian.
They need somebody more established than that, I think.
Yeah,
like Thomas Greiss. They can get Thomas Greiss.
Thomas Greiss is Thomas Greiss is out there. Talbot's out there. Markstrom we talked about.
Nothing screams.
Markstrom will not be out there.
I don't
Mark
think
my words. Markstrom will never hit the market.
I honestly think that what you're looking at with Holtby is the answer.
Carter Hutton's available.
And I think
in the booth,
we all think that you can't get Holtby to go there. If Holtby doesn't go to Calgary, like beyond Calgary, what is there? Like beyond Calgary for Holtby, if you want to be the starting
San Jose,
definitely.
Vancouver, better spot for him than Ottawa, though. San Jose.
Oh yeah, come on. Are you kidding me?
I mean, how does he see it? How does he see that?
Maybe, you know what? Maybe the solution is that they get Martin Jones for a song, and they hope that he can have a bounce back, because he's burned his bridges in San Jose. He's got term left in his contract. They need to get to the cap floor. They probably could get him for a 3rd-round pick, as I'm sure Doug Wilson would be more than glad to get rid of him right now. That might be a reclamation project, and he's the right age. He's in his 20s.
Yeah.
I would also say this, Ek. Who's to say if Columbus, let's say their goaltending looks horrible in these playoffs, that they don't go out and get Holtby? Because there's no guarantee Elvis is going to be a number 1 goalie in this league for the next 10 years. He looks good, but he might be a backup. Holtby would go to a team like Columbus because they are up and coming.
They just signed both goalies, though, didn't they, to extensions?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything, because they can move those contracts. Those are they're very movable. They're less.
They're low area contracts. They're not high money.
Exactly.
All right, Russ, you're gonna love this news that just went off the wire. March 18th. This is not just off the wire, but it was close enough. And Cam Young in our chat room brought this up too, and I'm looking for the more current article, but I did find out that this has been even delayed even more. Here we go. Ready? I'm going to share the screen with you because you'll like this so much. I want to share it with you in person. Here we go. Here comes NHL Seattle to delay the unveiling of the.
Yeah, we knew that.
Now, this is. But then,
please tell me the wisdom in this, Ek.
I know it's now not going to be mentioned until the fall of 2021.
Why?
Which is what we're being told. So because the arena's gotten pushed back.
Fall of 2021.
Yes, because the arena's gotten pushed back.
No, that's when they're going to be. No, it's going to have to be before.
No, there are rumors out there, and Karen Young read about it. We didn't see it online because I also was hearing people.
No, I saw it today. I thought it was fall 2021.
There is an article.
I want to find it.
The article today was basically that the reconstruction of the Key Arena. It was pushed back, that it would be finished by the summer of 2021, and they are scheduled to start in the NHL the fall of 2021. So the naming
name has to be before then.
Yeah, the naming has to be this fall. It has to be this.
That's right. Yeah, it was this fall. I'm getting my dates right. Yeah, it's this fall.
That makes more sense.
Right, it's this fall, but still, why?
I mean, isn't it possible that this COVID thing could push everything back?
No. The NHL wants their $500 million.
No. Hold on. It is possible. Yes,
it is possible
because even the building in Belmont got halted by a few months. And while they claim it's going to be on time, you never know. And if it gets halted again, it definitely will not. And Key Arena could get halted again because of this. You never know.
I mean, things are out. I think that right now it's not. So. I think the problem is you don't want to announce the name,
but there's still going to be a team in the league. Why am I not selling merchandise?
To me, the fact they haven't announced the name means that they are considering delaying this a year. Because
I know the name. It's going to be the Seattle Rain Delays.
No, because the only reason you don't announce the name,
R-E-I-G-N or R-A-I-N there, Mike?
I mean, they know the name. So the only reason they don't announce the name at this point is you don't want to put it out too far in front of the actual story, right? So if that's the case, then doesn't it stand to reason that
No.
they're
Hold on. Modern day marketing tells you put out the name and the logo a year before they actually ever play in the sport. That's how you do it.
But what if you are looking at something that is a year further away than you thought?
Well, you can't control that. So why am I not telling
that? You have to wait till you know that it's not.
But there's going to be a team and a name, and if it's set, why am I not selling that stuff now?
And what's the downside?
Right, there is no downside.
It's like, okay, right now you've got this vacuum until the beginning of August when the play-in round is supposed to start. This is the perfect opportunity to say, okay, we're going to be the Seattle MFers.
I'm trying my best.
Just think about this. Just think about if you lived in Seattle, and you had a little kid, and your little kid's a hockey fan, and he goes, "Dad, I want to be a fan for hockey," and you're like, "Well, son, you could be a fan of the Seattle team," and he's like, "Okay, what's the name of the team?" "I don't know." Well, how do you know they're going to be a team? How do you explain this?
I agree. I'm trying to play devil's advocate best I can here, but I agree with everything you're saying. But I'm just saying that the way they think, the way marketing people think, they don't want to put it out if it gets delayed a year. That's my only reasoning that I can think of why they wouldn't put it out.
Well, I think they're missing sales on that. That's me personally.
Then don't delay it a year.
Well, you don't want to delay it a year, but they don't know. So that's by them not knowing, this is what they got to do. That's my thinking. I don't know. I'm trying to logically think of a reason why they wouldn't be, because there is no logical reason. We're all sitting there saying, why the hell aren't you putting the name out?
I mean, honestly, the ice in Key Arena is good enough they could play right away. What they could do is a Coliseum job. I hate to say it like that, but renovate as it's open. They could do that.
Yeah, they could, no question, and it'll be better. I mean, and we've seen history.
And it's the building is a hockey building. It's set up for hockey. I've been in it. It's fine. People like it there when I used to see the Seattle team in the WHL. So in the Thunderbirds, I think it's fine. I mean, I don't understand why everything would have to be perfect, shiny, new for them to announce the name, and it just doesn't make sense.
So someone saying they could buy the Thunderbirds name, that might be what's holding it up.
They're not getting any press. How about that? In the area, they could be getting all kinds of mentions.
You don't want to get press if you're delaying it a year.
But you shouldn't delay it a year.
I'm talking like the marketing people are thinking.
Delay it a year.
Thinking of all the reasons that they couldn't be doing it. The only reason I can think of that they wouldn't do it is that's what they're afraid of.
Okay, all right, so perfect example. When you have these bands that put out tours, right, and they have now put it off a year, I could still go and buy that tour merchandise.
No,
yeah, but
all I know is that if they name them the Metropolitans, then all this stuff makes a lot of sense.
Until
your hatred for the Mets is not warranted here.
They don't exist yet, though. And I also think, I honestly do, that they're facing the issue of the fact that Vegas went off so well that there's fear here that this has to go off really, really well too, and they're facing a circumstance where they can't control that, and the NHL hates those situations.
I think there's a fear right now that it's not being handled very well.
But part of the announcement today, the delay, it was the expansion draft is not going to be held in Seattle, which you can also derive from that the draft is not going to be held in Seattle, which we heard was a possibility. So now the 2021 draft, which normally is named around this time, the following year draft is named around this time. It hasn't been named yet. I honestly, Russ, I'm waiting for it to be Vegas.
Yeah, it'll be Vegas or Toronto. That's my guess.
Yeah.
I think those are the two choices. Mike, I also wanted to point out to you that the Yankees played at Shea Stadium, and that field swallowed up Elliot Maddox once. So.
It did.
It took them years to get the taint off of them from playing.
Mm-hmm. Go watch
You ever hung out in Seattle, which I have.
I have, yeah, a couple times, twice.
You understand completely the hipster mentality of like taking it slow. Like this is absolutely like they're gonna like let this drag. No,
we were in Seattle last year. All I can tell you is it's the only place I've ever been to where the Starbucks had no outlets for for charging.
It's another world. It's a hipster paradise, but it's like
not only would I be advertising the team, I would already have a line of coffee if I was the Seattle franchise. I'd be selling that.
Yeah.
Sell. All right, well, that's about all the time we got for today, guys. We'll end on the coffee comments.
I was going to get to some marijuana comments, but yeah.
We finally did talk about the Ottawa Senators.
We did. Yesterday, Mike. Enough.
To finish up the Ottawa Senators before we get out of here, we should do that. I just think I think that they're an interesting team. They are definitely. We talk about how tough it is to make the playoffs in that conference.
Yeah, I think the best case scenario for the Senators is 6th in the Atlantic, ahead of Detroit and ahead of Buffalo.
I think they're ahead of both of them for sure. I think they could surprise and be ahead of maybe one more team there. I do.
Florida,
maybe Florida, maybe Montreal, one of those teams. If they had an off year, yeah.
Randy is congratulating us for finally talking about the Senators. Thanks so much, Randy. We really appreciate that.
Very sarcastic, dripping there.
Nothing better than sarcasm and passive aggressiveness from our fans. Okay, so there we have it. No, we do appreciate it. Randy's amazing. Randy said yesterday in the chat room something that was very concerning, though. When Hollywood Squares was on, he was already 50 years old. That means he must be
80
or 90.
He's older than me.
Yeah, it's that is definitely concerning. All right, we are going to move on, and I'm looking for. I'll watch the Senators. I'll watch them play. And I do think that their turnaround depends on the kind of goalie they get and how quickly that. I think that is their main focal point. And I think it's got to be an experienced guy. And I think that going with a young guy like Jerry would be a disaster for Jerry and for the Senators.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't.
Okay, we agree to disagree.
But, Eck, I do want to tell you about Hollywood Squares history. In the 80s, they did stay at my hotel, the entire Hollywood Squares, and John Davidson was the host, and he would walk around talking to everyone.
At your hotel at least once, Russ.
No, but you don't understand. Hold on.
Keep an eye, and I didn't even know it.
When they were John Davidson at the Columbus Blue Jackets / Rangers.
When they were filming the Hollywood Squares, the biggest stars were coming in and movie stars. They were basically baseball players. They were all coming in for like a half hour at a time to tape the show. It was actually kind of amazing.
Was Peter Marshall there?
No, I just said it was John Davidson.
No.
John Davidson. My favorite.
That's incredible, John Davidson.
Paul in
the original John Davidson, not JD from the Rangers.
Not JD.
No, the John Davidson who was
That's
better.
incredible.
The John Davidson.
Well, I was going to say, that's incredible. He wasn't real people.
Kathy Crosby.
The John Davidson who was better than Bert Convey.
The best hair in the world, if I remember right.
He had great hair. He did.
So I guess did you see Utah's hair first hand? Is that true?
Yes. Wow. And I smelled his cigar smoke when he would walk around the lobby and all that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, here's a picture of John Davidson for everybody who doesn't know, and never expected this.
He was popular back then.
Oh yeah, here he is. Here he is.
Yep, that's him. Oh yeah, the hair. Oh God, that hair.
That hair is so
he still has the hair. It's just silver.
I love this. I mean that. it's one thing to rock the hair. It's another thing to rock the hair when you're this old.
Yeah.
That's
when I start calling him Mildred.
He looks like
those of us who wouldn't mind having it. Not a bad thing. He looks
like Kenny Loggins.
Yeah, this is very much the John Davidson I remember.
Yes.
And that's incredible. Was what was like?
It was a big show.
Yep. That was a huge show. It was kind of like YouTube in a way. Like when you think about it,
it was like YouTube.
Sunday night at 7 or 8 p.m. on Channel 7.
Headline anymore.
It was Kathy Lee Crosby, him, and who? There was somebody else.
Tarkenton.
No, there was also a show called Real People, which was like.
No, hold on. There was another guy, a short guy. What the hell is his name? I'll
find it quickly here before we end.
I think his name was started with a B. It's not Brian, but it was something like that.
This is usually the stuff we do after we get you guys off the air.
Right, but we're just treating everybody to it.
Welcome to the post.
You're right, Fran
Tarkenton.
No, before him there was somebody else. Fran Tarkenton was not the original.
This is funny pictures here. Yeah, I don't remember who was for him.
Jim Stafford?
No.
Do you remember Real People? Anyone?
Yes.
Yeah, we better end the show, Eck.
That was like the other one like this. Anyway, without the buzz, it's just hockey. And without John Davidson.